Thanks for joining us tonight for the Yosemite Grand Loop presentation. I'm Jess Joyner from Mountain Shop, and we're joined by David Burdick. In May of 2019, David completed a 77-mile ski tour around Yosemite with, I think, 12,000 feet of elevation gain. And he'll give us some details about the route, share gear tips, and just more details. So let's get to it. Welcome, David.
Hey, thank you very much. Thanks, Jess. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about this trek that two other guys did going around Yosemite. Essentially, it's a little bit about that trip. It was done in May 11th to 17th in 2019. It took us 6 days. We traveled 77 miles and with a 12,000 foot elevation gain. James Haymaker, Andrew Knock, and myself were the participants in this trek. Here's the actual route. It's what I call my snow and tell version. So this idea came from this book, The Backcountry Skiing High Sierra by John Moynier. And I was looking for another way to get through the Sierras. James had already done it, kind of a Trans-Sierra. And I came across this book, did some research, looked at what was possible. 2019 in Yosemite happened to be a big snow year, or 2019 winter, and there's 150% of snow for that year, and so we took advantage of that. Here is basically where it's located, and in the context of things. You may recognize that as the States. And we're coming down to California. We took a car down there, nice 12-hour drive. And this is a bit of the loop. This is the loop, actually. We started, here's Yosemite Valley. We took a car to this location, parked the car, and then traveled this route. This is 77 miles. These are about 10 to 14 miles a day. Yeah, so that's about what I can say about that. It was, as I mentioned, 12,000 feet of elevation gain, and we're going to kind of go through the profile of each day in elevation, and then take a look. We'll fly through with a Google Earth Pro and be able to kind of get a good sense of the terrain before we take you on a tour. These are the three characters. James Haymaker's behind me, and then there's Andrew Knock. And each one of us had a great skill set to bring. James has got a lot of experience in backcountry skiing, 5 times as much as I have, 10. He is also knows how to do ultralight very well, backpacking, which is a big aspect of this trip because you don't want to overburden yourself. It's very difficult to ski when you're got a 50 or 60 pound backpack. And Andrew is an excellent skier, and he showed us the ways through some rather treacherous aspects to this trip. A little bit on the packing. I have been practicing ultralight backpacking for quite some time. I think this is a base weight of around 23 pounds. Plus you get 2 pounds a day for 7 days or 6 days. So that's another 12 pounds. So you're looking at 35 pounds, plus you got some skins in there. What you don't see in here is beacon, ice axe, probe, rope. All of those got ditched right at the car when we decided that that's too much weight for our trek. That may or may not have been a good decision. We'll find out. That's a little bit on the backpacking. I did not take a solar charger. I had enough battery for the 6 days. First day, has an elevation gain of something like that. It's about 1,700 feet, starting out at about 6,000. And this is what that looks like. Not quite the smoothest transitions yet to Google Earth, but we're working on it. This is really helpful though in being able to really get a sense of what the terrain was like. You'll see that actually our car is parked down there, or maybe not our car, but there is a car parked down there. And this is pretty much what we traveled through. This was in May, so a lot of the snow was actually gone. So we started out hiking and finally got into some snow around this location. Rather flat, rather, just gentle terrain for the first day with just a gradual rise to our hoped for hut, ski hut, the Ostrander ski hut. And here's a little bit of what that looks like on our trek. Oops. Try it again with a little more patience. There we are. Yep, pretty much. We had some snow. I think this is a 150% snow year. So we had snow for most of the trek, but we started out at that 7,500 with walking, as most treks do. Some, like James, is a pretty confident, well-balanced guy, and he's able to walk across a tree like that. Others, like myself and Andrew, are more cautious and travel along these, find ways to get across without a tremendous cost if things didn't go right. This is the Ostrander hut ski house. Unfortunately, it was closed. I had all aspirations that we'd spend the first nights in the ski hut, but they closed it, which is understandable, and a lesson learned on checking opening and closing dates. This was not a good sign to have blisters on the first day. Fortunately, this actually worked pretty well and kept me from getting further blisters on it. The second day had a little more elevation gain and loss. We're looking at around 2,600 feet of elevation gain over 11 miles. We get to take a look at the scene. Is going to look like this. Now we get into some, kind of typical Sierra location with not so much trees and a lot more, sorry, it's a little on the, gravel and talus type slopes. And that brings us to our first camp. So we're on that trek. We pass Merced Pass. We had a lesson as well. So this is what a little bit of it looks like. I brought some ice crampons or ski crampons. Very happy about those. The first time I've used them. And when you get an early start like we normally do, the snow is really firm, icy really. This is some of we kind of flew by this part, but this is what some of it looked like, trying to get up and over onto this plateau. There's Andrew, his joyful nature. Now we're into some snow and some beautiful weather. Coming down some of the slopes. There's a fair number, this is not a total downhill ski, right? So there's 12,000 feet of this, essentially. So it's part of the wonder of doing this. Some of the beauty, really, is this the gentle days and sliding along. So this, you might want to take this in. So this is on our second day towards the evening. And the binding that I had, this is called a volet switchback. It's kind of a new system. It failed. That whole pin, this whole pin on this side broke at this point. But fortunately, with a couple of engineers looking at this, Andrew's an engineer, I'm an engineer, in about 45 minutes, we found a solution, figured out a solution to kind of attach back here to this point that was flawless. It did not cause a problem the rest of the trip. You could still pop in and out, and it wasn't being lost. But it is a lesson. At that time, we were a little on the too ultralight side, so we didn't really have a good repair kit. I have attended one of the presentations that the Mountain Shop has given on gear to take when you're backcountry skiing. Highly recommended. Something like this, even though it's probably 2 or 3 pounds, could avert a tragedy, because something like this is either a long walk which you don't want to do, or the trek is over with. So the lesson there is take appropriate spare parts repair kit. This is a little camp that we found first night. We were camping. Took 7 ounces of gasoline per person per day to basically melt snow for the entirety of this trek. They recommend 7 to 10. We had come across quite a bit of open water, which is really helpful. But if you're melting snow, that's the amounts that they recommend. I've had to scuttle a trek or trip once because we ran out of fuel a day in, or would have run out. So the lesson there. Second, the third day, we had about 4,000 feet of elevation gain. These are actually quite steep, and we're going to see a couple of these as we go through. Let me show you what that all looks like. So day 3 starts off kind of gentle. And then that point right there, I just wanted to stop that for a second and take a quick look at that. That's actually quite steep on the other way. And that's where we came across our next potential tragedy. Because the idea is that, you would ski down this, and that's what we did. But in many cases, you can have a cornice that forms on this, and it's really hard to get down. You have to actually down climb, and that's where our rope comes in really handy. What you're going to see now as we go through, this is right around Merced Peak and Triple Divide Peak. We stopped today at what's called Harriet Lake, right here. Yeah, and it's interesting. Some, Google Earth is not as dependable as I thought. Usually there's some trail that we would be seeing, but in this situation, it wasn't there. So this is where our Camp 3 is, and on the way, we saw the following. And if you have any questions, again, just feel free to shout them out here, because we've got time to answer questions as we go through. Again, some of the really beautiful terrain. 30, 40 degree slopes, really stable snow. This is, several months after heavy snows. So we felt that having the beacon and the avalanche probe and the shovel would be too much weight. Yeah, so this is that first rather steep part that we came across, and kind of found out that we didn't bring that rope. We probably should have. This was a good 40 to 50 degree slope, and it's wonderful that Andrew has the talents that he had, because he basically showed us how to get down these things. But this is dropping our packs down the slope. That's called a commitment. And yeah, it's got a good run out. So if we weren't able to hold that edge, not a lot of tragedy. And this is Andrew. You can see showing us how to do it, even with his full gear on, actually. And this is also, the snow has warmed up. Good conditions all around for being able to do this. Here we are at the bottom of that first pass. Kind of happy that we made it through that. Now we're in it. There's no turn back. And we're coming up to that Harriet Lake. Setting up tents and camps. This, by the way, is a purchase that I made at Mountain Shop. It's the Scout. It's the Big Agnes Scout Carbon. It's a 1 pound tent for 2 people. Really quite an amazing tent. So the next day, day 4, this is our profile, elevation gain profile. Started around 10,000 up to about 13 and then down. And again, another pass to go through. And that looks like this from a fly through. Let's hope that my route's going to stay with us. Here we're going past Forester Peak and Mount Ansel Adams. We're going to be going by Mount Lyle, which was the crux of the trip. We have yet to find the steepest and scariest part to cross, which is right here actually, and I'm going to stop it and take a look at what this looks like from that angle. So that's the part that we had to cross. I guess that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get. That's seriously steep, right? That's a 50 degree slope with some rocks down here. That's Mount Lyle Pass. And as we travel through, across lakes and various side slopes, now we're getting back into tree line. We stop at Camp 4, which is on the Pacific Crest Trail. So that's looking up at our goals for the day. And we're starting to see some weather change too, which is a little bit disconcerting. We had a nice window of weather, and it's fortunate that in this part of the trek we did not have a snowstorm, because it would have really been challenging. This is part of the route that we had to walk up, basically, because the snow was gone, and south-facing slope, really slow going up. Have you ever burned your tongue from sun? That's what this is. It's sunburned tongue. Quite painful, really. And putting sunscreen on it didn't seem like an option. So this is a look at Lyle Pass from a photo. And yeah, that's what it looks like again from that. And this is Andrew. Basically, now he's dropped his backpack, slid it down, and he's showing us how to basically do it, basically. Now he's on AT skis. James and I both are tele skiers, but he gave us the confidence to go through that. It's, you're on steep when you can put your hand out and hit snow. Again, in fact, James did not ski this. He actually down climbed this, and it's again where that rope would have come in handy, I think, to get down onto the snow. But we find ways to get through. But in the future, recommend a 8 mil rope, 100 feet or something like that, 50 feet. Some more of the scenic beauty and sunsets. We're onto a downhill run now. So we start here at 10,000 feet or so, and drop down quite rapidly to Yosemite. This is, or to Tuolumne Valley or Meadows. That looks like this for the fly through. Day 5. We're going to go by Lyle Canyon. This is the actual PCT. We actually met some PCTers, believe it or not, in May. They are out there. They were on snowshoes. They were kind of frightened because they heard about the snow that was coming in, and they were not making the trail miles that they were hoping to do. And I think one of them did not have snowshoes and was post-holing quite a bit. This is Tuolumne Meadows. And we're going to end up at Donahue Lake. Yes, and that's a road. Where we stopped, in the winter, there's no cars there, but we found a bathroom, and it was starting to snow. This is our residence for that evening. Just kind of looking at our last of the High Sierra and some demonstration of walking through the forest, crossing streams, and all sorts of wonderful things, especially for some that are not quite as talented. It's a challenge, those stream crossings. But get up and you keep going. Here's what Tuolumne Meadows look like in the winter. It has a rather wide river at that time, which proved to be kind of challenging some points. That's the skis, by the way, that I was using. Madhus 78s really worked out well. The binding, again, broke, but I like that setup. You just pop a lever and you turn it from cross country or back country to downhill in a jiffy. Our comfort for this evening. Have you ever stayed in an outhouse? If you have, as I have a couple of times, you discover that this toilet can be pretty smelly in the evening. But in the future, if you do have the chance to or need to stay in a bathroom, outhouse, just take your plastic bag that you use for your backpack and put it over the toilet underneath the seat, and that will seal basically out any of the odors that come out of there and make life a whole lot better. Yeah, it was starting to snow, got quite wet, and we chose to use this set of outhouses. There was a canopy over the whole thing, so it made for a nice place to make dinner. And here's our final distance on day 6. We're starting at 8,000 feet, dropping down to 4,000, it looks like, something like that. 5,000 feet of elevation drop in 15 miles, which looks like this. So past the lake over to what they call Olmsted Point. Right there, then down Snowy Creek Trail. To the Yosemite Valley here. Just a moment. There's our Yosemite Valley, Half Dome, and down to Yosemite Village. Here's a little bit of our snow conditions that day. It changed a lot. So had a lot of wet snow coming in. Fortunate that we had it on this day and not on up there in the mountains. It did clear up kind of relatively quickly, and we saw this was the trail we were going to take. It took some navigational skills because that's a twisty little trail. And this is the solution I used to kind of just strap that phone on my arm so I can use it as we navigate through. still led us to some rather challenging crossings. And as the snow and rain fell, we had lunch. Here we come back into the Yosemite Valley. It's a beautiful trail, actually. Here we are, happy to see, after 6 days, sorts of signs of civilization. And yes, we spent another night in the bathroom because it was probably the best place. You know, after 6 days, you get kind of wet. Everything's wet, cold, and damp, and this is relatively roomy. And even despite the threat of hantavirus, we stayed in those. So this is what Yosemite Valley looked like that next day. And the reason we were seeing this the next day is because our car was parked up at the top of this plateau, and they had closed the road because of that storm. And that storm was threatening to be several days, maybe a week or two, that they would close that road. So it took several hours of discussions with the Yosemite security to make the decision to let us go and get that car and bring it down and open the gate. It was no issue. There was no snow up there yet. They were just being safe, but they wanted to keep all trail traffic out of there. Eventually, we were able to convince one of the folks to let us go. In fact, he gave us a lift up to the car because he didn't want to have that open for very long. A little bit more of the Yosemite Valley. Got quite a history, Yosemite Valley. And this is our shuttle ride to our car. So there you have it, folks. The Yosemite Backcountry Loop on May 11th to 17th, 2019. Took 6 days, 77 miles, 12,000 feet of elevation gain. Us three. Here's a link for the actual trek, the actual trip. And if you're very curious, you can click on that, and we'd go through the video that comes along with it. If you're interested in more of these types of adventures, I started up a backcountry ski group called Portland Backcountry Skiing Meetup. And there's about 370 members right now. It's a meetup group. And here's the address. You're welcome to join and join us on various adventures, both big like this one and small. I think that's how we got Andrew, I think, discovered us through that route. So are there any questions? It's a quiet group.
Looks like someone raised their hand. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm curious how I know you didn't bring your axes, your crampons, or your rope. How did you feel about that decision after being out there?
You know, it was after being out there, we happened to kind of avoid tragedy, and we didn't carry that extra weight. I don't advise it in the future, but this is a bigger trip for me because I haven't done this type of stuff before and didn't know that we were going to come across, downhills like that or passes like that. So in the future, I would take a lightweight ice axe and definitely just a rope enough to get over the pass. And that's what's recommended in the book too, to take that. It's just that, kind of group decisions get made. Beautiful days, and sometimes the concern about weight overweighs, the potential unknowns. But good question, Jess.
Yeah, I just know how that early morning snow can be. And yeah, it's a very different story when it's like 2 PM and it's sunny and everything is soft. And there's another question that came up. Someone's curious if the stretches where you had to hike, if you brought trail shoes or did you just hike in your ski boots the whole time?
Hiked in the ski boots the whole time. But again, kind of a weight saving thing. Those boots were heavy. My new boots are not as heavy. Actually, they're these. The Scarpa, T2s or something like that? T2s, yeah. The newest, latest, lightest thing. And these are comfortable, frankly, to hike in. So I have yet to bring like shoes to hike in, again, because of the weight consideration.
Yep. There's another question. Did you use your phone for navigation throughout the trip? And
Yeah.
how did you power it for 6 days? And did you have a GPS backup?
Good questions. So this is the battery pack, or one like this. This is 36,000 milliamp hours, and so that's a week of charging this when it goes down every day. That's how I did it back in 2019. I've got another trip coming up. It's part of the Hayduke. It's a 300-mile trek. There's going to be 9 days between civilization, and I am going to bring a solar charger, a 20-watt solar charger, because you need some serious solar charging when you got the sun, because you don't always have the sun, and so you can go 3 or 4 days without much sun, and you grab it when you can. So that's what I am going to do in the future. I've got another type of battery. It's a little smaller. It's not 36,000. I think it's 30,000. But this phone has really been a solid phone. It's a Galaxy S9, and I put a little protective case around it, and it's waterproof, right? So it can take rain, and that's really been good. I mean, I used to use maps like everybody else, but really the GPS and Gaia and Caltopo have been really helpful in making navigation a lot easier and a lot more simple. There is a concern that if you do lose your battery or your phone, or if it breaks, or you should have somebody with a backup. I think we might have brought a GPX system 2019. Probably brought my other a Garmin system that had the same set of maps in it, but I can't quite remember.
Another question. Someone's curious if you would have preferred to be on AT skis or AT bindings next time instead of the tele setup.
I really like the tele setup for a couple of reasons. It's a tele with fish scales. It doesn't require skins on most surfaces, right? It's only when you're really on steep stuff do you need to put skins on. So that fish scale with this tele setup, but you can do that with AT as well. But what I've been seeing with the AT over the years is that there's so much failure rate with the AT gear. This one's much simpler, yet this even failed. But I've experienced frozen and freezing AT gear. People get a lot of blisters with AT gear because the pivot is a little different. The boots are not quite as comfortable. So I'm sticking with the tele gear, but that's probably old school thinking. But it's just that coming across enough times as I lead various trips and folks have issues with their AT gear that it's kept me on the tele gear. It used to be 3-pin, right? That was really simple. Even the cables wouldn't go. But you can still have issues with the 3-pin, as I have had ripping out.
Another couple questions that came in. Did you like the distance that you did each day, or would you change that thinking back on it?
No, we did as much as we could. I'm a strong believer in just like be ready to travel at dawn. I think we probably didn't do that this much because we wanted to soften the snow a little bit, especially if we had something steep we had to go up right away. We would wait a little bit, but that 10-mile range is about right. Yeah, if you're doing flats or ups and downs, for me 10 miles is about all I can do. And there's time, you stop at 6, right? You got a long time. So we were probably getting 8 hours of sleep, still getting up at probably 5. So that we're off and ready to hit the trail at 7. Or the snow.
Your nighttime temperatures, do you know what the low was? Do you remember?
I remember if any of the water froze. I think water did freeze most nights. So the solution is to keep that in your sleeping bag. It was around the 30s. I don't recall it to be, intensely cold. In fact, I'm thinking that it was probably above freezing for most of those evenings. Some of those clear nights, though, it got pretty cold. So I was in a sleeping bag. I don't think it was quite warm enough, actually. I believe I kept most of my clothes on and over, in jackets and bivvies. So I've kind of upped that to catabac. You can probably just, the name of the catabatic sleeping bags. They're a little different. They're pretty light. They're pretty warm. I got one that goes down to 0 now. Yeah, I think it's 0, and I use that pretty much all the time. Yeah, but if you do have freezing nights, it's tough because the water you prepared gets to go inside your sleeping bag, and that's kind of scary, really, because if any of those leak, you've got a bigger problem.
Did you need a backcountry permit?
I think you did. That's my memory, is we did get it. We needed to tell them where we were. But, it's not like you have to compete with a lot of people. It's not like the PCT or anything. I think we did. I'm recalling. Yes, we did get something. There's no issue. You'll get it because there's no one else out there.
Did you have, sorry if you said this, but did you have a GPX track that you were following?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you get that?
So I made that based on the book's track. So that book, that Moyer, he kind of pencils in some routes, and I looked at those routes and then just transferred it to CalTopo, and then from there, 2019. Now now CalTopo has got a phone system, and but Gaia has had a good phone system. But just once you get that GPX file, you can transfer to a lot of different devices.
And then were you kind of just trial by fire in terms of getting up and down the like passes? Were you kind of just looking at it as you got there? And
Yep, the book talks a little bit about, there's a couple of passes that you're going to want to have a rope, possibly, or they're going to be, pucker moments, and they definitely were. And it could have been worse, right? There could have been a cornice over that, and it could have been a 10-foot drop and vertical. So we were pretty lucky. I think that late of the year helped as well. But yeah, it was, you got the route, but then you can see the best way to go through. It's a nice combination.
did you bring any avalanche gear with you?
Nope, we did, but we left it in the car. Again, the snow. So a couple of reasons for that, right? You look at the previous conditions for the last couple of weeks. You look at the temperatures. If the snow is stable and it's not going to have any wind-blown snow, that's one reason for keeping that away, or keeping it in the car. You get caught in a serious avalanche, I like to call these beacons, they're corpse finders, really, because you can't really live through a serious avalanche. That's, in my opinion. So they give you kind of a false sense of security. So yeah, we left them back. I think that was a good decision. I think the snow was stable, and we didn't come across a situation where the slope was starting to slide. We have been, and I have done other treks, and if you get into the spring and you get warm suns and certain kind of facing south facing slopes, you can get into trouble. So that's where those can come in handy. But that was the decision then. Whether it's right or wrong, it's kind of a group decision too. It doesn't help if you're going to bring yours and nobody else brings theirs, right? So it's everybody's got to bring it, and then just the beacon isn't enough, right? So you need a probe, and then you need a shovel. So everybody's got to bring all of those, and it was just a decision that preferred the speed and lightness over safety.
All right, last call for questions. We have a couple thank yous.
Super. Well, it was a pleasure putting this together and kind of reliving old memories. I appreciate James and Andrew joining me on this one. Yeah, it sounds like a really fun route. Just Yosemite is so busy, but to be able to be there at a time when it's probably pretty quiet, sounds like a really cool experience and a good way to, just see it in a very different way. So it's really neat to hear about. And it's not something that I've heard a ton about, doing this kind of route. And definitely interesting. Well, thanks.
I'm curious about, the route finding sounds really interesting too. It sounds very like you just got to go and see what's there and what the conditions are. So that's like a whole other added challenge, but
right.
Sounds pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've got other talks, if you guys want to hear about going around Rainier, 10,000 feet, that's an exciting one. That's done a long time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you everyone on the call for tuning in to hear about this 77-mile loop around Yosemite. David, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. This presentation is recorded, so I'll send out a recap email just to anyone who registered with a link to the recording. I'll also include the link for David, if you want to send me your meetup group. I think I wrote down the correct name, but I'll put that in there for anyone who's interested in finding partners or hooking up with David to go adventure. And I'll also throw in the name of the book that you got this route from. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we will see you around.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you.